Hello, everybody. Andrew Taylor here. We have Zack Moreno with us today. Zack, thanks for joining us.
Of course, man. Appreciate you having me.
For those who don't know, Zack is 24 years old. You've been selling insurance since what age?
Honestly, 19.
So 5 years in.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a top performer. How many sales have you made in 1 month?
Most sales in a month, 130 families.
So you've sold 130 policies in 1 month. Now, we wanted to talk about something a little different today, and it's for somebody to avoid these roadblocks when they're new to selling insurance and things that they can expect.
I like that.
There's a few that I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
The first one is how to handle chargebacks and be aware of them, and how to handle managing your money.
You know, I think this is actually a good one because the previous company I came from, I went through a lot of those learning curves, and chargebacks was one of the main ones. At first, I got a lot of cancellations, like probably about 50% of everyone that I sold. And over time, what I realized was that the chargebacks, first off, I was fearing them too much to begin with. Like I was almost causing them because in the house, I was thinking about, I just need to get out of here, right? I sold it and I had to run. But, over time, learning to be a better agent, I started to realize that I needed to actually cement it a little bit. So after I, got them the policy in place, I needed to talk about like almost remind them of why we just did everything we did, right? Mm-hmm. Bring out the value that I got in the intro. Like, why are you doing this today? I just bring it up again at the end, right? Why did you get this again? Like almost get them to speak one more time. What was the point of getting this insurance for you guys? Does it feel good to have it, right? Make it a tangible thing in their mind. And what I realized was that it made it something that they feel like they owned, right? And honestly, it eliminated a ton of chargebacks. Now, chargebacks, I will say though, even over time, being at like 50%, I'm right around like 85, 90% now retention on business. They're still going to happen. Even to me, they're still happening today. And I've been in the business a while.
Dude, so one of my mentors who's 85, and he's the man in insurance. This is his training to keep business on the books. After I sell you a policy, okay,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to go, Zack, we're getting this in place for you, but before we finalize it, I need you to promise me something.
Okay.
If you don't keep this policy, then this is what he says. If you don't keep this, then this policy isn't worth more than 3 dead flies. And I don't know why he says that. It must be some saying in Texas mm-hmm. or something. And they're like, huh? And then he goes, if you don't keep this, it's not worth anything. So I need you to promise me that if you think about canceling it, you're going to call me first. Because if you don't keep it, if something happens to you, we can't bring a check over to your family. I
like that. Bringing the value out.
So before I finalize it, you got to promise me that. Is that a deal?
Deal. I promise.
So he does that. And I think that's a great tip to...
I like that a lot.
Increase persistency of getting people to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when you're new, you can get excited and you can make a sale, but it was kind of wishy-washy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you avoid that?
Honestly, the wishy-washy part within the home or like afterwards?
Within the home.
Okay.
Like there's red flags of them saying, well, I might not keep it.
I don't know. Can we cancel this? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, what I do when someone says that, I'm just like, with cancellation, I'll just put it this way. If you were my family member, I would absolutely say, no, you can never cancel this. So the reason someone gets this is because they want to keep it in place to protect their own family. And you mentioned, John, that, right at the beginning, this was important to make sure Beth here is taken care of. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ask him a question, right? Okay, great. Now that we have it in place, if you end up ever thinking, same thing, I do the exact same thing. I'm just like, down the road, you have to promise me if something changes, you're going to let me know. But I will tell you that if you're thinking about canceling now, I would rather you actually revert back to the things that we talked about at the beginning, these extra bills. Maybe let's talk about canceling one of those because those are wants. This is a need, right? And I turn to Beth, Beth, do you agree with me there? Bring her in. So honestly, I think it's just you got to remind them of the value. And sometimes you kind of do have to pull them across the finish line.
Do you think that your belief level in this will transfer to them?
Absolutely.
So if you really believe it's the right thing, that it'll transfer to the customer?
Absolutely.
If you're doubting yourself or if it's a good idea, do you think that will transfer to the customer?
They feel it. Absolutely.
They can feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I noticed the more I believed in it, the less chargebacks I got.
I agree with you there.
Now, chargebacks, let's talk about that. You get those in any business. So it's not just insurance. It's if you own a pizza place, there's some sort of chargeback. It could be expired food or extra food ordered.
Exactly.
It's costing you money and it's not making you money. And
Walmart, people steal stuff.
Walmart, people
Staff
steal stuff.
break stuff when they're putting it on the shelf.
Bartending, giving away free drinks in restaurants. I mean,
it's a give and take relationship. You can't make money without losing it sometimes.
Well, it's the difference from an employee to an employer or
Exactly.
an employee to a self-employed mindset.
Exactly.
But if you look at it like that and you kind of embrace that and you go, okay, 20 to 30% of people, if I'm doing my job really good, will most likely cancel for one reason or another, and I just need to build that into my profits, then it's not that big of a deal. Now, when I started, Paul McLean recruited me and like 10 of our friends from high school when I started selling insurance. We all made our first sales. I remember one of them, he went and bought a bunch of clothes. He showed up with new shoes. We had fake IDs. He was buying drinks at the bar for everybody. And next thing you know, the person canceled.
Really?
So his commission, now he was completely out of business because he had no money for leads and he spent all that money.
Makes sense.
I was always really conservative about managing my money, saving a certain amount, giving away a certain amount, investing a certain amount back into my business, regardless of the amount that it was. Do you do anything like that? Did you have to learn anything like that?
I was actually the opposite, I will say, at a certain point. So like I do know what you're talking about because that happened a lot to a lot of agents that have actually been on the team. But for me, it was the opposite. I actually saved so much that I wasn't willing to invest in anything. So like even leads, I wasn't willing to put money back into. I would never, I never really spent any money. And that's something that I kind of had to, just being honest, that's kind of what I had to go through.
Well, yeah, it could go both ways.
It goes both ways.
If you don't feed your business, it won't grow.
It'll die too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a balance.
Yeah, but some tips here on managing money, I think that a lot of people, they make more money, they buy more stuff, and then they don't have any extra money.
Right.
My approach was make more money, invest it to where that money will make me more money, and not worry about materialistic stuff, and not worry about keeping up with other people.
I completely agree.
But just being aware of it. Now, some people say if you can't save or manage money when you're making $20, then when you make more, there's no way you'll save or manage that money either.
Exactly.
So regardless of your situation, start to put these practices in place right away. Overspending on leads is the next one.
That's a big one that I was doing. So
now you got to be careful here because you can not feed your business, but then you can go overboard.
Right. And honestly, this was something that I ran into. At first I wasn't spending enough. Like I said, it was something that like every week I would stretch. I think we actually were kind of similar on this part. I would spend $500 and stretch it out, milk it into the next week if I didn't get the result I wanted. Right. But then I started hearing from people, hey, I'm investing X amount. And I immediately started doing that. Now, that was the right move at the time, but eventually I started taking on every possible lead I possibly could, and I did start overspending. And at a certain point, I was like, all right, I'm selling a lot, but my expenses are too high. What can we change here? And I remember actually asking you about it, and you mentioned
Well,
something
you were
to me.
spending some obnoxious
Obnoxious
amount.
amounts. I mean, I was grabbing counties thinking that like, down the road, my team can like take some of them. And it was just overly expensive, to be honest. And we weren't doing virtual at that time. So like, I was just like, I had leads in different states and I was having to go travel trip and all that stuff, which I think is a good thing. Again, it kind of put my back against the wall, but at a certain point, it honestly, that money could have been utilized in other forms to grow the business rather than just grow my own pen.
Yeah, that's huge. So overspending or underspending on leads.
Mm-hmm.
I was spending $50 a week at first.
Yeah.
And calling the crap out of them. People thought I was harassing them.
Right.
So I was doing that. Then I got to the point where I was buying so many leads, I wasn't following up on all my leads because I would just get more.
You always knew you'd have more coming in.
And it would just be like, there was almost like waste.
Yeah.
So I made a rule to spend a certain amount on leads that would get me a certain amount of appointments based on my numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then resolve every lead every week. So I didn't have a bunch left over. A resolve would be either get a yes or a no.
Exactly.
From the person, call them, text them, and I would door knock them because most people won't do that.
Right.
So usually there would be a lot of buyers in there if I did a route on Road Warrior and just went and door knocked everybody.
Right. Makes sense.
All right, next one. Keeping staff for too long.
Oh man, this is one that I I definitely partook in. Honestly, I think that saying, if you invite, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but if you invite poison in, poison spreads, right? And I think for a long time, I was constantly just thinking that, staff members in the past that I hired, like, well, they're on my dime, like I can't let them down. Like it was almost opposite. It was like I was employing them, but I was getting so emotional that I was like letting them kind of take advantage of the situation, right? And it wasn't for months until I finally just was like, this is ridiculous. Like we haven't grown at all looking at our numbers. And, I've been paying X amount every month. Like, where's the growth here, right? And I remember Sean was this saying really hit the best, which was, if if you're gonna keep someone around and you aren't growing, fire them because you can do that yourself.
Well, also before you hire anybody,
mm-hmm.
if you're gonna add an employee to your business, these are the two things I ask: what are they gonna do in detail? Not like, oh, they're gonna do this. What are they going to do in detail, and how are we going to measure their results?
I like that.
And if you can't come up with those two, then don't hire anybody.
I like that.
And if you can measure the results, then they're growing, and that way your business can stay healthy.
You're not just having staff to say you have staff.
But also having a goal, finding the team that wants to grow with you, but you also have to make sure it's worth it for them.
Right. So
creating an environment that's worth it for everybody, a team that wants to grow with you, but also everyone having measurable activities where you can see results and grow every week.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. Contracting anyone and everyone that wants to. This is a good one.
Yeah. Honestly,
this means any agent that calls you, you contract.
Yes. And this was something we were doing for, I would say, once I actually started wanting to build the business, my first push was just put out as many ads as I could. I started overspending on everything, right? So I was spending all this money on ads for cold market across the nation. And I would just hire, and it wasn't just hiring everyone. It was actually the fact that when I'd hire someone, there was not really any expectation. Like there was nothing in place. It was like, hey, almost overselling the opportunity and not taking away anything, right? And what started to happen was it was almost like, all right, does this guy even care? That's actually what started happening, because it was almost like they came in and they just felt like they were a number. But I think as soon as we nipped this in the butt, which was simply by actually asking questions up front, like their goals, why are you even reaching out to us to begin with, and starting to create those expectations, that's what helped us grow exponentially.
Yeah, my rule is like, if getting along with somebody is hard, and I always say it's like swimming upriver to get along with someone
Mm-hmm.
on an initial conversation, I just don't hire them.
Because it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So like if it starts with, well, I don't like this and I don't like that, I'm good.
And I used to cater to that.
I did too.
You know, like, oh, well, we can help you here, right?
We'll give you whatever you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So find people you get along with. Find people that
Almost like match your energy type of thing.
Yeah, match your energy. But I had this rule too, like, and I got this from the. I had a dinner with the guy who started Home Depot, and he said when he hires a high up executive, the interview is a dinner that he takes them to with some other executives, and they count how many times they say thank you and how appreciative they are and their general enjoyment of life.
I like that.
And that's their interview.
Wow.
So just people that are
grateful,
happy, have good perspective, easy to get along with, team player. That's what I'm looking for.
That.
Yeah, it just makes life much easier.
Yeah.
All right. Only one way of selling. So some people think I can only sell over the phone. I can only sell in the home.
You know, I think that at the end of the day, it was kind of going back to actually what you already mentioned, resolving every lead, right? And if I've got all these leads coming in and I'm only doing over the phone and they don't ever answer their phone, well, what about the door knocking? Right? Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother way that I'm probably missing profits there, just on a business perspective, and not taking care of their family, right? Which is what they asked me to do. And that, I think, was something that, like, now I'm strictly hybrid. Like, for a moment, I was like, oh, I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon. I'm going to just do phones because everyone's doing it. And it's like the cool new thing, right? But now I've just realized that I was missing a lot of people. And I, like, my first year, there's probably 130 families I wouldn't have protected if I didn't go out and door knock those homes, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes you have to get a hold of the people through the ways that they're, you know, not everyone's going to answer the phone. So it's easiest to just kind of keep it between all three.
Yeah, I say, like, this is what I tell people. I had a burning desire to win because I didn't want to work at the grocery store and I didn't know what I was going to do if I graduated college.
Yeah.
So, dude, I didn't care what it was. I was doing all of it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. All right. Not having a persistent schedule. So I would say this is one of the biggest things to avoid if you're new, is not having a persistent schedule. Did you ever do that? If you did, how did you change it?
Yeah. You know, I think actually before I talked to, it was actually Brittany Smart. It was at the first annual convention. Before that, I honestly, coming from my previous company, they were on me all the time, right? And when I came into this, I was like, oh, the freedom's nice. Mm-hmm. But then the freedom started to become like almost self-employed became almost unemployed. Like I wasn't actually working, right? And I started questioning, like, why am I not hitting these numbers? Like, why are they, you know, how are they so much better than I am, right? And it was a schedule problem. There was no consistency in everything I was doing. And I think without consistency in what you're doing, you can never see the result that you're actually wanting to go for, right? So the more I was able to just say, all right, I'm going to show up on Monday, Thursday. Those are my dial days, right? Then everything started to change, because instead of it just kind of being like, well, you know, today I need to run errands. I'll dial tomorrow. It was, no, my word is law. I'm going to stick to what I say I'm going to do, because that's the only way to get the result I want to see. And then I started just showing up day in and day out. And the emotions, this is the thing actually that happens. I was only emotional when I didn't have a schedule, because everything was all like up in the air and my finances were questionable. Everything was questionable until I had an actual consistent pattern that I was sticking to. And now I wasn't ever worried about the chargebacks. I wasn't ever worried about, you know, the bills that come with business, right? Staff, whatever it is. I'm not worried about it anymore, because at the end of the day, I know that I'm going to go out there. I'm going to protect families because I have a consistent schedule. And as long as I go with that schedule, I don't care if Tuesday's a blank day, as far as like I run 7 appointments and I don't get one. Well, guess what? I have 7 more the next day. I'm going to be okay. You know?
Yeah, so treat yourself like you're your own boss.
Exactly. Would
And
you fire yourself?
would you fire yourself? Would you give yourself a raise? Would you,
I love that.
not want to be in the same state as you
Exactly.
because you don't want negative energy to rub off?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you be, hey, this person is crushing it. They're showing up on time, and do that. Ask yourself that.
Yeah.
And if the answer is, I would give this person a raise, more than likely your sales are going to be way up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just the way it works. All right. Perspective. I've always thought a lot about this because, like, when I first started, this was like a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow I started to take it for granted.
Yeah.
And complain about it. And then someone was like, dude, didn't you do this because you didn't want to work at the grocery store anymore? Would you rather do that?
Mm.
And then the things that you're complaining about, like, dude, aren't you just happy to be alive?
Absolutely.
So have you ever got sucked into that? And have you ever had to focus on perspective to keep going?
Absolutely. In fact, I think this was one of the hardest things for me ever when I even first became self-employed, because our minds, Andrew, are from day, like we're all conditioned to almost think negatively all the time.
For sure.
Right? So all of us every day are thinking almost the worst case scenario and everything. And what I started to do,
why is that though?
I think it's honestly because everything that we watch, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff out there and most of it is negative, right? That's how you attract attention. And, our parents, I mean, at least mine, were not, the most positive people. We just learn it over time, right? And I think that most people would rather complain than actually make action. And that's what we see all growing up, right? And the mind is kind of funny because it does play tricks on you. It'll make things seem worse than they are, and it'll make you forget about being grateful, right? And what I started doing was actually practicing. I know this is extreme, but I started practicing every day daily gratitude, right? And this was very early on in business because I remember, I was always thinking, am I going to get a sell today? Like I'm always overthinking everything, right? Because that's what we do. And instead, I just started watching and analyzing my thoughts as much as I could. And every day I'd wake up, and before I put my feet on the ground, I would start saying something that I'm grateful for, right? I'm grateful for X, even if there's not much you can think about, even if your life isn't that great, right? There's always something you can pull out. Like we're not in a third world country where, like wars going on all the time. People are dying. Like we have it pretty dang good. You know what I mean? So just taking the little things to be grateful for, it starts to train your mind to have that perspective that you're talking about, where it's like life is great.
I like what Brad Lee said. He goes, if I gave you would you be happy if I gave you $1 million right now?
Absolutely.
Would you take it if you knew you were going to die tomorrow?
No.
What about 2 million?
No.
10 million?
No.
So he goes, you're already rich.
Right.
Because you have something that's priceless.
It's more valuable than money.
Yeah.
I love that.
But it's such good perspective.
It really is.
Okay. So perspective, which also when you're happy and grateful, you attract more business for some weird reason. People gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
So that's something big too. All right. Chasing good leads. So I see a lot of agents every month. This is the new good lead this month.
I can't tell you how many times I got this all the time, and I still get it. I'll hear things like, oh, well, he's selling a lot because of X, right? This kind of goes back to perspective. It's when we're in that frame of mind, we look for everything to compare ourselves to that tells us why we can't do something, right? And I did it too. I was one of those people. I was constantly thinking, oh, well, Brittany Smart, for example, must have better leads. And then I met her. I'm like, no, she just goes to work. I don't go to work, right? So I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to leads, and this is actually the perspective I have because of all the other sales jobs I've been in, I look at them as literally a foot in the door. I don't care what lead type it is. As long as I can book that appointment and I get my foot in the door, I'll turn an internet lead into multiple types of leads, right? It could be mortgage protection, final expense, all in one home, Like it doesn't, there's no set criteria. Like, yes, I know it says final expense lead, right? But it could turn into mortgage just as much. I think at the end of the day, as long as you have a good lead flow, and that's really the problem, it's that you don't have enough leads to begin with. It's not the lead type, it's the volume of leads that you basically don't have to run.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. All right. So chasing good leads, what we always would say, a lead's a lead's a lead. What does that mean? They all work. And I always say they all work and they all suck.
Yeah. I mean, I was working bait and switch, man, which they could fill out whatever they want. And then you're going to show up and talk about life insurance when they never asked for that.
Yeah. Or in other words, everything works a little bit.
I like that.
Or they work if you work.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So chasing the sell, you had mentioned this one. What do you mean by that?
So chasing the sell kind of goes back to the perspective thing. So I actually like that they kind of intertwine. When I was new, and I think most new agents do this, we overthink what's to come, right? So for me, something that I had to work on prospectively, honestly, was not overthinking what's about to happen ahead of me or what happened behind me, right? Because if I had an appointment, let's say at 9 a.m., right? First appointment of the day, 8 a.m., whatever it is. And let's say I go in and I get yelled at. And like they're not happy with me for some odd reason. They're in a bad mood. We all know, we've all been there, right? But I take that and I carry it into my next appointment. Guess what? The next one's probably going to be the exact same way, because where our attention goes, energy flows. You cause what is on around you from the inside, right? So I think kind of going back to transfer of emotion, if I can go into the home and only think about that moment and being with that family and just trying to take care of them the best I can, even if that's not getting a sell, then the fruit will follow. When I was new, I was so focused on the fruit that I pushed it away, right? I was constantly thinking if it was a bad appointment, I'd take it with me, or I would get to the home and I'd be so nervous about what they're going to say or how's it going to go that I would actually get anxiety and worked up. And then once I got in, they could feel it. And I pushed the sell away because now it's commission breath. You can smell it on me, right? But I started to just realize, you know what? If I can be present in this moment, truly in this moment, and just take care of them the best I can, and whatever that may be, I'm happy with it. Right. I think that you kind of have to, you don't get the fruit, right, the same day that you plant the seed. It follows. So as long as I can go through action, being grateful, back to perspective, and just being there, helping everyone, I will get sales. It will happen. And it could be 2 hours from now, it could be tomorrow, but by the end of the month, trust me, I'm going to have plenty of sales and plenty of families that I was able to help.
Sweet. All right, and the last one, not comparing yourself to anyone else.
This is a big one. I think we've all been there. You been there yourself?
Of course.
Yeah. Not comparing yourself, I think, kind of comes back to, if you're comparing yourself, you're constantly thinking about, what someone else is doing, or should I change what I'm doing? And I feel like your mind goes in so many different places that you have no set criteria anymore, right? Like if I'm always thinking like X person is crushing it at this and I need to change what I'm doing, it might be good, but it also like, maybe I haven't tried this enough yet, right? So I just think that comparing yourself, it can be a dangerous thing, because at the end of the day, you are who you are, and you kind of just have to accept that.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So I always said behind every overnight success story, there's 10 years of hard work you can't see.
Absolutely.
Which means you can't compare yourself to anybody, because you might not have gone through that in your life yet.
Absolutely.
Right. Also, it kind of steals your joy. And if you can get your fulfillment from your own activity and beating yourself every day, I don't think if someone could truly do that, I don't think anyone would ever be able to keep up with them.
Yeah. Again, it kind of is ripping you out of the present moment. You're always thinking about what's next.
Okay. Lastly, the conference. Anyone who's watching, Family First Life's doing a conference. It's, where's it at? What's the name of the stadium? Marlin Stadium in Miami. It's completely free.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to teach people how to sell insurance. We also have a bunch of speakers lined up. Jocko Willink is one of them. Who else?
What's that guy from
Shark Tank?
I can't remember.
Damon. Damon John?
Damon, something like that. Dave Anderson, I know will be there.
Dave Anderson.
Pastor Matthew.
Pastor Matthew. There's some other big ones. Alex Rodriguez.
Oh, that'll be a good one.
Yeah. Now, I read a book by Jocko Willink called Discipline Equals Freedom.
Mm.
And it's so good. If you get a chance, it's really short. Read that book to get an idea of who you'll be hearing from. But I literally was so pumped up after reading this because this guy's just a complete animal. And you get to go see him for free, learn from all these people about business, learn from all these agents. You can register at fflconvention.com, and it's completely free at Marlin Stadium. It costs millions of dollars to put together. All the vendors will be there. All the carriers will be there. Lead companies will be there. You can meet people. You can learn from other people. It's going to be awesome.
I was just going to say the networking is where it's at, because before going to my first annual convention, I was protecting maybe 5, 10, 15 families a month. Mm-hmm. Right after that first annual convention, again, meeting people like Brittany, meeting, I think there's Dave. There's people that were doing it, right? And I was able to see two parts. No one special, not taking away what they've done, but no one special, right? And like, honestly, if I'm putting in the work and the effort and I have the right lead flow and the things in place, I can absolutely do it. And I believe most people can too, right? And I think that right out of the gate, I know for a fact, the following month that I came out of annual convention, that first one, I went from 15 families to 40 families a month, and then up to 75, and then hit 100 families in 1 month, all from going to annual convention. So if you're not going, like, honestly, Andrew, I would just quit now, to be completely honest. Because, like, you know how many conventions are out there that you have to, like, spend money, $10,000 to attend.
Not only that, they're going to upsell you $10,000 while you're there.
Exactly. And honestly, in my opinion, they technically, like, Sean could charge for this convention because there's that much value, but it's completely free.
And he could upcharge a bunch of people in there.
But it comes back to what you said at the very beginning. Don't take this thing for granted.
Well, the problem is when you don't charge, people don't have any skin in the game, so they bail.
Exactly.
So someone that's brand new might bail because they didn't buy a ticket. But if someone bought a ticket for $400, $500,
mm-hmm.
they don't want to lose their money.
Yeah.
But pretend like you spent it, but it was free.
Yeah. And I mean, psychologically, people just think free means it must not be worth it. And that's not true at all when it comes to this.
It's not true. It's just trying to do something good.
Exactly.
And help people where they don't have to pay an admission fee to get in. But if you're thinking about going, book your flight, book your hotel so you can't bail, and register.
FFLconvention.com.
FFLconvention.com.
Awesome.
All right, Moreno, keep killing it, bro. I'm proud of you. 24 years old. You got a bright future ahead of you. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys later.
Appreciate it.